Hello, my snacks, welcome back. Now, you yourself might have been following this beautiful tale over the last year. Just a beautiful showboat of an Andrew Tater tot alpha mailing themselves to ruin. You see, it all began midway into the year. Back in July, a woman asks, "Am I the a-hole for my husband accusing me of financial infidelity?" Now, this story's had a lot of progression since then. So, to simplify it, we're gonna just read the TLDRs of the first few posts. Those of you who are already familiar with some of the story, feel free just to skip ahead. So, the premise: husband and I, 33 male, 33 female, are fairly high income earners, about $200,000 a year each, own our home free and clear. No other debts of any kind. We save close to half of our income and most finances are joint, but we allocate $1,500 a month each, plus any extra income such as from bonuses or side hustles for fun money. For hobbies, luxury goods, outings with our own friends that aren't together, etc. Yeah, sounds like the absolute dream. Really sounds like a relationship you'd want to screw up, isn't it? Husband tends to spend his fun money month to month due to his expensive hobbies, primarily golf, while I tend to save the majority of mine because of my interests, such as running and baking, are less expensive. I have been getting back into gaming lately, though, so I have been saving up more than enough of my fun money. I spent $5,000 on a new gaming rig and a really nice desk and chair. Husband blew a gasket and accused me of financial infidelity, even though I was operating within what I thought were our agreed-upon rules by spending my own allocated fun money on hobby stuff. So, rich people having a lover's quarrel over petty cash that most people would consider an entire 6 months of income. Unsurprisingly, many comments were basically, "Shut the frick up, you rich people. I hate you. How dare you have a life that's better than mine?" I mean, come on. I get it. It's envious seeing them being rich, but having this huge rant as if, hey, your clear domestic abuse problems don't matter because you have money, so yeah. Some people even wanted to give him a bit of a chance. He just feels a little emasculated right now. I mean, sure, he's not saying you're not allowed to spend this sort of money. He is technically just expressing that he feels like you couldn't possibly have this amount of money. You must have been stashing it away from me. But anyway, clearly seems to be a bit of a case of control issues, and let's see how the update played out. So the update comes just a week later, another TLDR. Husband finally calms down to have an actual conversation beyond accusations. Turns out hubby has been feeling increasingly unhappy for a while, for the following reasons. Again, a lot of bullet points, but let's just summarize it right down here, because honestly, that's all we need to do with all this BS. Husband told me he was actually upset that he feels I'm not professionally ambitious enough because I'm not on the executive track like he is, and that, despite me working full-time, he wanted me to cook fancier meals, set the table in a more elegant way, and dress up more for dinner. Yes, like a 1950s housewife. And in case you are curious about this cooking schedule, I would argue it does make sense with their dynamic. Apparently she does all the cooking because she works at home and has an easier schedule compared to him. Okay, understandable. But yes, it seems the man is upset he's currently doing something he decided to do, and she's not equally suffering because of choosing to, do something that is fun and fairly easy for her. How dare she prioritize her own mental and physical health over the approval of someone who gives her money? And yeah, man is upset when he comes home from work and finds her in comfortable clothes. No makeup. I mean, goddamn. Hope he even gives us an example of this at-home attire and look she has been disgustingly wearing. And my God, look at that. Basically look like a basket. I understand your partner's disgust. But hey, it's okay, everyone, because he also says he loves me enough to be honest. I do believe he isn't trying to be hurtful. I really had to drag this all out of him. But the paragraph before, the bottom line is that because of all these things, he's starting to notice other women. Says he hasn't cheated, he's just noticing other people because he's regularly disappointed in me. And this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is where honesty isn't always the best policy. If you are in this situation where you find yourself more interested in strangers than your own partner, you don't tell your partner that. You make personal efforts to fix that. That's not something your partner should change. That's something you should change because that is you that is causing that to happen. You are losing interest, so you find a way to reclaim that interest. You don't say, hey, I'm losing attraction to you because XYZ. You say, hey, can we do XYZ like we used to? You give your partner the empowerment to reclaim that attraction that you once had for them. If they don't pick it up, if they just brush it off, then yeah, okay, that's when it's the sign that, okay, yeah, you've done your part. They clearly haven't done theirs. Time to take this a step further. So, 10 days after that post and 10 days of comments absolutely enveloping this OP to run, we get into some more meaty confessions from the husband here, and yes, they get as bad as you expect them to be. So, the more I thought about it, the more his requests, demands, really, were sitting poorly with me. I decided to try a little experiment over the weekend to see what would happen if I tried to meet some of his demands. Not because I actually thought they were reasonable, but because I increasingly had the sense that the goalposts would just keep moving and that I was playing a losing game. So, Saturday morning, I went to the salon for a glow-up. Haircut, fresh highlights, manicure, pedicure, then went to the farmer's market to pick up fresh flowers for our table and assorted other gourmet ingredients. Saturday is usually our date night out, but I suggested we stay in so I could make us a special dinner, steakhouse style. Lobster bisque, bread basket with several types of rolls and savory muffins made from scratch, crab stuffed mushroom, filet mignon, au gratin potatoes, white chocolate mixed with raspberries. I'ma be straight. If a woman cooked like this for me, I wouldn't be as appreciative as I'd be scared. I'd be so insecure. How do you match that? I don't have money. I give good back rubs. I also wore a lavender, his favorite color on me, sheath, dress, and high heels, and fully done hair and makeup. For all that, I got a lukewarm "thanks, it was tasty" and a kiss on the cheek. Of course, I did all the serving and cleanup. Wow, you should burn him at the stake, 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 burn him at the stake. Sunday, we usually go out, but he suggested I make us brunch at home. So I made French press coffee, mimosas with fresh squeezed orange juice, Belgian waffles with a bananas Foster topping, eggs scrambled with parmesan, and fresh herbs from our garden, roasted fingerling potatoes, and maple glazed bacon. I wore a blue sleeveless sundress, wedge sandals. Again, did my hair and makeup. Again, I got a "thanks, it's good," and no help serving or cleanup. Afterwards, I asked if this is what he had in mind when he critiqued me before. He said that it was a start, but that I was acting very entitled for wanting credit for basic adulting. Make him do it. Make him do all those things, please. Please make him do all those things to prove he is equally capable. Oh my god, who needs to pay for a Cirque du Soleil ticket if you can just watch this man amazingly backflip from his argument? He then dropped a bomb that he was being so hard on me because he had realized lately that I had a lot of makeup for due to my being a low-value woman. I asked what on earth he meant by that, and he said it was because I wasn't a virgin when we met. What? Keep in mind, we started dating at 21. Neither of us claimed to be virgins or stated that as an expectation. Except for very religious people, neither of us is. I don't think most 21-year-old college students are virgins. I was upfront with him then, and I'd had 2 previous partners. My high school boyfriend, yada yada yada, and another boyfriend I'd had my first year of college. And that's it. Both committed relationships and nothing casual. He then went on to say that because of my low value, I was going to need to be making it up to him for the rest of my life. That I didn't deserve monogamy or equal treatment, and that I was lucky that anyone at all wanted to marry me. And that he's connected with someone from work, so if I wanted to keep him, I'd better step up. This woman literally makes the same amount of money as him, to the point she treated herself to a $5,000 treat. If she's low value, you are speaking to a mirror. I told him it didn't sound like there was anything to keep if he no longer loved me, or even liked or respected me. I told him to leave, and he said he would gladly go to his girlfriend's place. Yes, I know so many people here insisted he was having an affair, and I just didn't want to see it. That his complaints, really, all part of a campaign to distance himself from me. I feel so foolish for just thinking he was going through a stressful time, or that he genuinely wanted to work on our marriage. And to summarize the rest, she takes a week off to get herself in the clear, contacts the lawyer, cancels the marriage counseling, with this a-hole and his new thing coming over this evening to get more of his clothes and etc. Ultimately ending rather hopeful for now. To be honest, I don't know what's worse. The fact he never truly believed all the BS he was trying to force on her, he was just using it as a way to justify him eventually dumping her, or if he actually genuinely did believe on those things and was using it to try and set up his personal anime otaku harem that he clearly dreams about. Oh, and one last gem from the husband. So on the note of the ridiculous claim of virginity sanctity, OP asked at the time, so this person you connected with at work is actually a virgin? Well, she was, he said with a smirk. So, virgin or not, someone who would sleep with a married colleague is higher value than me, unless he lied about his marital status or situation, which I wouldn't put past him. So yes, he admitted he has been having an affair for several months. He kept trying to say that it doesn't really count as cheating because I'm low value, so the standards are different. And thus begins the satisfying downfall of this man's life. About 2 weeks have passed, and now we meet Amy, the sad, gullible girl who's about to treat us to some wonderful lies and general BS that this man has been assuring her of. So, he was supposed to come get his stuff on Tuesday evening a couple of days ago, but told me at the last minute he couldn't because Amy, his girlfriend, wasn't feeling well. Some people called in the comments, but yes, she's pregnant apparently. He told me this on text, so I have proof of the affair in writing now. It's not just his word against mine. So at this point, OP decides to do all the packing herself, basically like an alpha male, leaving a woman to do all the hard work for him. OP went to do an STD test, and according to her lawyer, she apparently has a good case for grounds of adultery and mental cruelty, which should help with the settlement. Finances all locked down as well, so things really seem to be in her favor. OP also decides the grand idea from some commenters to get rid of the furniture and anything she shared with her now ex-husband to completely redecorate the space in her own taste. Also taking a spa weekend away and using plenty of fun money to afford everything to do so. Also, he was hardcore child-free before. I didn't want kids either, but he was especially militant about it. I mean, maybe he changed his mind, but it doesn't seem like this was exactly a planned pregnancy. He can't even be bothered to put his own laundry in the hamper or put a dish in the dishwasher. How is he going to deal with an infant? Now, in case you care about the specifics as to how Amy and OP's ex met, apparently she was some sort of prodigy who managed to get into the same career path and position as he did. He himself sort of crawled his way up, so you can imagine his already preset ideas on her. A woman who has a brain just like any other human being having a natural ability and talent better than mine? Impossible! She must be using her vagina! There's no way she could use some other pink organ to get her way in this career. No, it's impossible. So a month later, we come to some more court talk, but the grand meeting between Amy and OP where Amy gets some real sad revelations. A quick summary of the legal battle, not quite as favorable for her as we'd like to hope. It was done fast, and she got everything that really mattered to her. Most notably, the house I inherited from my grandmother is 100% mine. That is very important to note. She also got her retirement accounts and her fun money account, but she did have to give him 75% of all the other cash assets, since although he wasn't on the title for the house, he did contribute substantially to the large renovations they did. In which case, look, it does sound kind of unfair that she's giving 75% of their shared assets, but I guess when he has invested a lot of money into the house himself, I kind of think that makes sense. If you put a lot of money into something someone else owned, making it much more valuable as a result, but you don't get to get any gains from that yourself, yeah. Guy may be a total a-hole, but he still is entitled to some sort of income. Another paragraph just spilling the beans on how they got this done so easily. Mutual consent grounds. Basically allows them to fast track this kind of thing. And considering Joe has a pregnant girl to take care of, it's understandable, he wanted to speed things up. But now for the real dirt of this update. Last weekend, shortly after all our papers were signed, Amy reached out to me. She asked if we could meet and talk. Perhaps I should have declined, but I will admit I was curious about the 24-year-old prodigy and, until recently, a virgin person who was Joe's affair partner. So I agreed to meet her for lunch. So the first thing is, Amy is very pregnant, like third trimester. She confirmed she is due in mid-October, which means the affair has been going on a whole lot longer than Joe let on. Whatever. It's water under the bridge as the divorce is almost final. However, after some polite but chilly pleasantries, she asked me, when am I going to be moving out of the house? Because surely Joe has been patient enough with giving me time to get my life together, and her apartment is small, and they are needing space for the baby. So obviously Amy's been mistaken about who owns this house, which understandably inquires OP to ask more about what Joe has told her. These gems include, so it was true that she and Joe met at work, but it was about a year ago, when they were both interviewing for the executive training program they are now in. Amy said, though, that they first became friends before getting together romantically. Apparently, Joe told her that he was legally married, but that we had been separated in spirit and living separate lives since 2020, but that he didn't want to kick me out and make me homeless during the pandemic because I didn't have much money and we live in a HCOL. Joe told Amy that we met in our early 20s when he was mentoring me in a GED prep program, that I was a high school dropout who was struggling with addiction, and essentially that he rescued me, helped me get clean, tutored me for my GED, and had been supporting me since through gradually working on college classes. He told Amy I was working on prepping for an IT career and was currently making $45,000 as a help desk technician, and that he wanted to make sure I could at least afford a studio apartment. He also told Amy that we had separated because I had relapsed and he couldn't have a meaningful relationship with a drug addict. Now, it is true that Amy was a 24-year-old virgin prodigy. She seemed dismayed that Joe had told me that, though. At least the virgin part. Said it wasn't a moral issue. She really was just focused on school and work and didn't make time to date. And that generally, guys her age mostly interested in casual hookups, especially the younger finance bros types. And she wasn't interested in that, but that Joe took the time to get to know her and was actually interested in a meaningful relationship. I asked her if the pregnancy was planned. She said no. Of course not, but it was a miracle because Joe had a vasectomy, so they took that as a sign that they should keep the baby. No. Joe did not have a vasectomy. As we were planning to be child-free couple, I suggested it a couple of times over the years. He firmly stated he didn't want to alter his body like that, so he left birth control as my responsibility. So it really does seem that Amy is pretty blameless here. I mean, those of us who have been around the block would likely know not to believe a guy who claims to be separated but is still legally married and living with his wife, but without her having any dating or relationship experience, I can see where she would have taken him at his word about everything. After all, I didn't know anything was amiss with Joe until a couple of months ago, and I was married to him. Now, of course, Amy didn't want to believe me, and I don't blame her for that either. After all, she's been in a relationship with Joe for close to a year and is 7+ months pregnant with his baby, who is coming soon. Ready or not, I couldn't immediately refute everything she said, but I showed her a couple of things. First, a picture of me in my late teens with my grandmother in front of my house, and also my LinkedIn profile, which shows my current job and education. Told her to do what she wanted with the info and to please stay safe and take care of herself, and then said my goodbyes. Yes, it was all very odd and unexpected and surreal. So holy crap, glad the trash took itself out. Now look, at this point, some people are starting to think this is a bit fake, like some sort of weird girl power fantasy fiction. So you'll feel free to have that skepticism if you'd like. Some things do sound a bit too convenient on the OP's end, how they're kind of getting out of this pretty well unscathed, but I guess that's the power of having a very financially stable career. I mean, all of this a-hole stuff of the husband does explain a lot of other things he was lacking in, such as his minuscule fun money. I mean, how can you spend so much money on golf that someone's equal amount could spend $5,000 on gaming gear? Well, it turns out that, yeah, a lot of those golf days were actually spent with her, Amy. not golfing, and he only played golf once or twice a month, weekly, as he represented to me. And hey, did you tell him he never actually had a vasectomy? Well, apparently she just didn't believe it. Clearly, he just didn't want to tell me, because he had only gotten one because although he did want kids, he didn't want to bring them into the world with a drug addict spouse. So now you've made it to the grand conclusion. As up until a week ago, no one had any idea what was going to happen next. The seed has been planted in Amy's mind that Joe is not a trustful schmo. Well, it's in this post that our questions are finally answered. And it's in this story where I do think this is a very legitimate, tale, because it's not exactly the girl power satisfying ending you want it to be. So skipping through all the recap, OP is now fully divorced. The final decree coming through a few weeks ago. But after August, all was quiet for a couple of weeks until Amy, her due date quickly approaching, reached out again to ask if I'd given any more thought to her offer to pay me $17,000 to vacate the house quickly so that she and Joe could move in. At this point, I decided to package up a lot more evidence of Joe's lies to send on to Amy. I sent her a copy of the deed and property tax records showing the house is in my name only. I sent her copies of my diplomas to prove I am not a high school dropout. I sent her some info on various professional associations I am involved in and awards I have won to show I actually do have a senior level job and am not an underemployed, as well as proof of my income. I sent her copies of all my drug test results for the past 5 years. I have a drug-free workplace and have to test 2 to 3 times a year to show I am not an addict. I sent her time-stamped photos and text exchanges to show that Joe was still having a romantic relationship with me until July this year. Nothing salacious, just photos of us showing G-rated affection, exchanging loving words over text, etc. Even found a text exchange from a couple of years ago when we last discussed him potentially getting a vasectomy, with his final decision not to proceed with one. After a couple of days later, she responded. She believed me! However, in the end, it didn't matter as Joe convinced her he had lied for very good reasons. The way they both tell the story, they met at work and were incredibly drawn to each other in a way that felt inevitable. However, due to Joe being married, he felt that if Amy knew he was happily married to that point, she would either turn away from him and miss out on the love of a lifetime, or she would go ahead with an affair but be consumed with guilt. So, to avoid either of these outcomes and still get himself a bit of puss, he, especially to save Amy from guilt, decided to create an alternative narrative in which he was in a marriage that he had ended for all intents and purposes years ago, in all ways but legally, because I was an uneducated addict who kept relapsing and couldn't get my life together. That was so she could essentially believe he was single. Oh, how noble of Joe to bear all the guilt alone. Unfortunately, Amy said she understood and forgave him immediately. With a baby due any day, I suppose I can sort of understand the desire to justify the lies, even though the reality is horrifying. I suppose it's also not my problem anymore. Amy did have her baby over a month ago, and I guess she and Joe will make whatever life together or not is meant to be. In other news, Opie now has a couple of roommates. A friend who is also going through a divorce moved in, as well as a younger, mid-20s cousin of mine who moved to the city for work. We're all having a lot of fun together. I'm not really ready to date yet, still in therapy, processing all the marital fallout, but getting there and looking forward to whatever new adventures life has to offer. And that's it. The saga of Joe and Amy and OP's girl power fantasy, which, if you want to keep it as a fantasy, yeah, that's all good to you. Does seem to be a shame that Amy is still foolish to think Joe is a saint in this scenario. I mean, if he's ditched a 33-year-old woman, what makes Amy think he's gonna stick around in the next, 9 years? Child won't even be in the double digits yet, and he'll already be looking around for someone else. Now, before we make any judgments about the $17,000 offer to move out of a house that's arguably within the millions, OP does clarify that $17K is the maximum one can give as a gift in 2023 without a tax penalty. Basically, Amy was trying to offer her own money as a gift help out. Again, at the time, Amy genuinely believed that OP was some struggling drug addict who squatting at this point. On one hand, you don't want to feel sorry for Amy at all now because she's really just being a total idiot. But again, as the OP says, I'm not sure how I'd feel if I were dealing with all the aches and pains and hormonal issues of being 9 months pregnant only to receive damning information about my partner as well as an easy out to justify the lies. Yeah, the reality of living with a new baby and a lying cheat will hit her like a shovel. I feel bad for the baby. Well, anyway, that's it. That is all the lovely tale we have to hear for today. Thank you for watching so far. I hope OP's housemate scenario doesn't end up on r/bad roommates. And if they, ever want to make another $5,000 gaming setup for a friend, I'd just like to let them know that I am a very good friend.